Hi guys, this is tutorial I think number 3 for effect and presets, shapes and backgrounds, and in this tutorial we are going to look at NerveNet Circular. It's very interesting and you will learn a bit about some blurs or so. It will help you more in your other videos. Let's create a new composition. And we take 1280 by 720. We leave the name as comp3. Let's take only 2 seconds because this one will take a lot of rendering time. Cool. Let's go to NerveNet Circular, click on it and drag it and drop it on the empty comp. Immediately you have a shape layer that is already created for you. Now, if you look inside the shape layer, you have contents, of course, and you have group 1, and you have a polystar. And you notice how they are also driven by expressions all the way, inner radius and so on. They are very interesting expressions if you would like to look at them. Also, you notice that stroke 1 is a hue blending mode. It's not just normal. And you have the pucker and bloat that is also driven by an expression. Okay, so we notice all this. That's very nice, but we really can care less. We care about the animated shape control, and we care about radial blur and the calculation. Cool. So what is happening exactly here? You have a shape layer in this shape format. If you look at it, of course, you can scale it up, down, to whatever you want. Cool. Let's go back to 100% and let's run a RAM preview for 2 seconds. You notice how the lines are now being played with and they are moving. So this effect exactly, if you look inside content again and you look at the stroke, you notice here that you have the dashes. So they're playing on the dashes to give you this kind of effect. You can come and do some changes. For example, instead of butt cap, let's make it a bit bigger. Let's take it to 5, for example. And instead of using butt cap, you can use a round cap. You will notice it has changed. Instead of meter join, you can use round join. It will change a bit. And you can play with the dashes. You know, you can increase them. You can decrease them if you'd like to. It depends on you. And then you have the gaps. Also, you can play with the gaps. If you have taken my course, the complete After Effects course, you will have found all this in the complex shapes section. Nevertheless, you can play with here and try to change the shape that you have. This is really not the interest of this effect. What is interesting here? First of all, you have animated shape control. Then you have a radial blur. That's pretty interesting. And you have calculation. Let's focus on the radial blur here. This is a simple radial blur that is not obsolete at all for now. Let's create a new composition to explore a bit the radial blur, how it works. We create a new comp. For example, we take a clip and we just drop it at new comp here. And we have our video. That's pretty nice. Cool. Let's go and search for a radial blur. Of course, you are going to find it until blur and sharpen. And we have here the radial blur. Now I want to draw to your attention, there is CC, that's from Psychor radial blur, and there is radial blur. So we're looking at this one. Let's take our radial blur and drop it on the video. Now you notice that you have a kind of shape here or certain format. This one you can start moving and it will move. Notice how you have a center here. That's the same center as the radial blur over here. You can increase the amount of blur, and here you are, you have totally different blur, or you can move the center again, and so on. So this is the center, you can put it in the middle, we have seen that, and of course you have type, you have spin or zoom. If you go to zoom now, it's a bit different, but yet you can do very nice animation with that. For example, if you hike the zoom and keyframe it, here you are, and then after a few seconds, a second for example, you make the amount 0, so remove completely the blur. Here you have a very nice animation of bringing the blur from outside to eliminating it, and it's quite nice to introduce some videos. So this is the way radial blur will work. Let's go back to our composition 3, and we notice here that if we change the blur, the same effect we are going to have on our lines or our shape. Of course, you can come and increase the number of polystar here, or even use a polygon if you'd like to. But let's stick to the star, and we have a certain shape. It's very beautiful, by the way. I will show you how to get it. So now I'm moving the layer itself, and let's run a RAM preview. Now, I warn you here, it's really rendering intensive. It's gonna take some time, and you have already a very nice background, and you can use that or you can put it outside the composition. Let's hack the blur and be patient for the rendering. Let's go to something like this, and now you have some amazing look. Now it has rendered completely, and you can see how beautiful it could be. Of course, it's very speedy. You can slow it down. Let's take it to 6, for example. And you have this kind of waves coming out, or radio waves if you like. Fine. This is about the type is spin here. If you take zoom, it will change completely, and you now have the lines and so on. We'll learn how to remove them. Now quality, I will use it later, because when you go to high, it becomes really much nicer. Now notice here, as soon as you play with the blur, so actually the whole thing is about the blur and how you manipulate it. You can get it to do some very interesting backgrounds here. Cool. Now let's look at calculation. Calculation is supposed to have an input layer and a second source, or an input source and a second source, where they mix together. For me, for this effect, for a background, I'll just remove calculation. I prefer it much better, and all the lines you notice, they have disappeared. If you play now, you have some fantastic background coming up. So what's happening exactly? You have the animated shape control that's animating through all the expressions over here. And then you have the radial blur. This is the key. You can play with calculation if you would like these lines. I don't like them. You can put them to none also. They will disappear on the second source. Or you can come and start playing over here. That's very nice. But really it won't make a difference, because I don't like the lines. And the center is almost everything here. We're still in zoom, but spin is much nicer. That's my opinion. And I love the spin here. If you notice what's happening, you have a real nice background. Now I'm gonna ask you for your patience. I will go to 0 and I'll put to high, and then try to render again. Here you are, it has finished rendering, and it's a very beautiful background that you want to use. Now, since the rendering is taking very long, you don't want to render every time you add text or you add a video or something like this. What do? You come to your project, and as simple as this, you will come to comp 3, that's comp 3, you right click on it, and what you say, create a proxy. When you create a proxy, you will create a video, a movie, and it will be inserted in your project panel, and it will replace comp 3. So every time After Effects does not have to render the effect, but has to render the video, and that will be once, and it's okay, and you can play around with it. Try this create proxy movie, and you will see how speedy it will become. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you liked it, and hopefully in the next tutorial we move on to the next one, that is NerveNet Linear. I'll see you then.